the presidential election this year will be fought on. But before his race-based attacks on a federal judge recently took the spotlight, before that, it was Donald Trump's ugly comments about women that were the focus of the very first anti-Trump ad released by a pro-Hillary Clinton super PAC last month.
You know, you could see there was blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her wherever. Does she have a good body? No. Does she have a fat ass? Absolutely.
You like girls that are 5'1", they come up to you to where?
If Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her.
I view a person who is flat-chested is very hard to be a 10.
And you can tell them to go themselves.
Does Donald Trump really speak for you? Priorities USA Action is responsible for the content of this advertising.
There is something sort of perfect about the first major party presidential nominee who is a woman having that guy as her opponent, right? That guy of all guys. But the general election campaign between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump has really just started now, and we don't know what Donald Trump is going to be like in a huge stakes national coast-to-coast contest against a female opponent. Over the course of his time in public life and then his time winning the Republican primary, we've seen the development of this very cartoonish character who says outrageous things and never really suffers the consequences for them. But the presidential campaign is a full-body MRI, as they say, right? And no cartoon is allowed to get into the presidency. Donald Trump is not a cartoon. He has lived a real life. He is a real person who has had real relationships with real people. And as evidence of his respect for women, Donald Trump has repeatedly talked about hiring women for top positions in his businesses. Again and again, he's bragged on his selection of a woman to oversee the construction of Trump Tower in 1980. That woman's name is Barbara Rez. She worked for Donald Trump over a period of 18 years. And in an election season that is not known for nuance, Barbara Rez has offered one of the most complex and nuanced views of Donald Trump that we've heard from anybody. She's written, quote, "Trump told me when he hired me that I was a killer. He said men were better than women, but a good woman is better than 10 men. Feminists might call this sexism. I don't." Quote, "Trump had several extremely strong women working for him. He would always hire the person he thought was best without regard to gender. I know I never got a break like the one I got from Donald." And yet, she also says he would, quote, "leer at attractive female employees," and he would talk about women in terms of their physical attributes. She told the New York Times that he once said to her face, quote, "You like your candy." Quote, "It was him reminding me that I was overweight," Ms. Rez said. So it's more complicated than a cartoon. She says when he called her honey bunch at work, it wasn't demeaning. She says it was a term of affection. She says they were genuinely close. And yet, she is not supporting him as he runs for president. Republicans who underestimated Donald Trump in the primary all got beat by Donald Trump. And he may all but destroy the Republican Party because of it. Who knows? Democrats who underestimate him, I think, mostly do so by only believing the crudest caricatures about him and assuming nobody else will ever fill in any shading between those cartoon character lines. What can we learn about what to expect in the months ahead from somebody who was very close with him for very long, somebody who's seen his talents and his flaws up close and worked with him for nearly 2 decades? Joining us now is Barbara Rez. She's a former senior vice president and executive vice president in the Trump Organization. She's also the author of All Alone on the 68th Floor, How One Woman Changed the Face of Construction. Barbara Rez, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Is my characterization fair, that you have sort of nuanced and mixed feelings about him?
Absolutely.
When you see him, the issue of his relationship with women made into a political point against him.
Yes.
Do you think that's fair? Do you think that's overstating the case? Do you think it's wrong?
I think it's fair because he has put himself out there. I mean, the interviews he did with Howard Stern and some media outlets talking about women, the things that he said, what he said about Megyn Kelly, what he said about Rosie O'Donnell, these are all actual things. They're not made up. They're direct quotes. They have them on record. And he has to be accountable for what he said.
You've written this book about breaking the glass ceiling, the proverbial glass ceiling in construction, and writing about the industry as a whole being a very, very sexist place.
Yes.
And even some women like yourself who got through into senior level positions weren't really able to clear a way for lots of women to come in behind you because the industry is so inherently sexist.
That's correct.
Was he better or worse than the average person working in that field?
Better. He definitely was better. He gave me a great opportunity that he and Ivana really liked me and observed me working with the men, and they wanted me for the person in charge of Trump Tower, and that was a great opportunity for me, and it took balls.
And you also saw him behaving in a way that you considered inappropriate towards women.
Well, actually, I have to say that I worked for him over a period of 18 years, and over that period of time, he changed a lot. I mean, when I worked for him on Trump Tower, we were very, very close, and he'd give me advice, and we would small talk, and we'd go to meetings without bodyguards and things like that. He was very human, and I saw a very human side of him. And although he gave me, it was very difficult, always very difficult. He also was quick to praise and was supportive. When I left him and I did another project, and I came back, and he had already changed a little bit, and that was when he finished the casinos and he was becoming a celebrity, and then he wrote his book, and he became more famous. People knew him in the street. He had bodyguards all the time. He started really acting the part of being the big macho guy, and that followed quickly with his carryings on with Marla Maples and the divorce, and then him talking about other women. That was all very alien for him. He was always very respectful for women.
So you're saying after his first marriage and after his public persona changed around that time, that also changed his private behavior and his professional behavior and the way he talks about women?
Absolutely, yes. And he was going through very bad financial problems, and I know he had a lot on his mind, so I'm not sure that he was himself at the time. And I thought I gave him, I said he's not himself. He'd say things that were unusual, very unusual, that I didn't expect from him. And he would talk about how he was carrying on with women so much that he disregarded his businesses, and the people he left in charge were the ones who sank him, and he blamed them. And he blamed the fact that he was with women all the time. I was very surprised at this, and I owed it up to his financial problems and the problems with the marriage.
After you were quoted in that New York Times piece about him last month, he kind of came after you. He tweeted that you used the word nasty. He said you were nasty. He implied that you were out to get him because he wouldn't give you another job. What did you make of that real backlash from him?
I have to say I was amused at first, but then he said some terrible things that I was surprised at. In a rally in San Jose, he said I was dangerous, and he called me a terrible person. What I did was, several years ago, I was looking for a job, and I contacted all my former employers, and that was great, and I spoke to all of them, and I contacted him through his personal assistant, who I happen to know, but I never spoke to him or anything. But I just asked, is there anything in your organization? I'm willing to travel, and, I'd be interested in something. And she just said that there's nothing now, and that was the end of it until I wrote my book. And then I sent my book to him, and I tried to get him to promote my book. And I thought he would really like my book, but I ran into him at a funeral, and he wouldn't talk to me. He talked to my companion, and he denigrated me, and he put my book down, and said no one's going to read it. I was so surprised that I wrote him another letter, and I said, I'm very shocked at your reaction to my book, and I thought that, we were so close, and, I always remember how close we were on Trump Tower, and I hope our relationship isn't ruined by this, because he wrote me a letter for the bar admission, he wrote me a letter for law school admission. I mean, he was always very supportive of me. So that was the last I communicated with him. The last I ever saw him was that one day when he was very, very nasty.
You going to vote for him in November?
Absolutely not. He's not good on women's issues, and that's what's important to me.
Barbara Rez, former senior vice president in the Trump Organization, the author now of All Alone on the 68th Floor, How One Woman Changed the Face of Construction. Thank you for talking to us about this. It's and on the one hand, I feel like I don't necessarily need to get to know him as a person, but it's really helpful to have somebody else's perspective on these things that he talks about when he's running for the highest office in the land. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you.
Thanks, appreciate it. All right, we'll be right back, Steve.